Japan has announced for the first time it will intervene militarily if China invades Taiwan. However, this is causing China-Japan relations to deteriorate quickly. The situation is getting so bad that even the Chinese consul general in Osaka said that Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi should be beheaded. Today, let's take a closer look at this issue. Let's get right into it. On November 7th, Japanese Prime Minister Sana Takaichi discussed the possibility of deploying the self-defense forces in response to a question about China's potential maritime blockade of Taiwan during the House of Representatives Budget Committee. The discussion was about the possibility of sending troops if China invades Taiwan. Until now, Japan has maintained strategic ambiguity due to its relationship with China. This is the first time the Japanese Prime Minister has discussed possibly intervening in the cross-strait conflict and supporting Taiwan militarily. Prime Minister Takaichi stated that if the United States military comes to lift the naval blockade, it is possible to assume a situation where China might use some form of force to stop them. He also referred to a scenario where, if force is used with warships, it could be considered a situation threatening Japan's survival. We must closely monitor this threat to Japan's survival. Japan can exercise collective self-defense, meaning it may send troops if an allied or friendly nation is attacked and its survival is threatened. Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi mentioned that this right to collective self-defense could also be invoked in the event of an invasion of Taiwan. Of course, if China invades Taiwan, there is a high possibility that the United States military bases in Okinawa could also be attacked, and that United States forces supporting Taiwan could be attacked by China as well. That's why they believe it could continue to be a situation threatening Japan's survival. This is the first time such a statement has been made. As expected, China continues to make strong remarks daily. After Prime Minister Takaichi's statement, Lin Jian, spokesperson for China's foreign ministry, criticized on November 10 that Takaichi was interfering in China's internal affairs by suggesting possible military intervention and violating the One China principle, key China-Japan agreements, and international norms. And I think we need to take a look at this. Cui Jian, Chinese consul general in Osaka, criticized on X on November 9 that calling a Taiwan emergency a Japanese emergency is a deadly path chosen by some foolish politicians. He also called it a reckless move that ignores a defeated country's obligations and the old enemy clause in the United Nations Charter. Referring to Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi, he made extreme remarks, saying that they have no choice but to cut off his dirty neck and that Prime Minister Takaichi should be beheaded. The post was later deleted. However, the fact that someone said a country's head of government should be beheaded is far beyond basic common sense. Prime Minister Takaichi did break a long-standing Japanese government taboo. However, making such rude and extreme remarks shows the level of China quite clearly. Consul General Qi Zhen is also known as a wolf warrior diplomat. Also, the Chinese embassy in Japan criticized Japan by posting on X, citing the example of Manchukuo under Japanese rule in the past, and saying that Japan has repeatedly launched foreign invasions under the pretext of being at a crossroads of national survival throughout history. This remark is causing a stir even in Japan. Opposition parties are sharply criticizing Prime Minister Takaichi for needlessly provoking China. Opposition parties such as the Constitutional Democratic Party and the Communist Party repeatedly argue the Prime Minister should resolve diplomatic tensions before addressing national security. They understand the Taiwan issue is central to China's interests, so they view Japan's mention of military intervention as self-destructive. Japan has so far maintained strategic ambiguity and hasn't stated its intent to get involved in the Taiwan issue. That was once taboo in Japanese diplomacy, but Prime Minister Takaichi has broken it. The opposition is concerned that this remark might not just end as a simple slip of the tongue, but could actually become a pretext for military conflict. If Japan provides military support to Taiwan, there is a possibility that along with the United States military, it could become a direct target of Chinese attacks. In such a situation, the safety of the Japanese mainland would not be guaranteed, so the opposition criticizes the Prime Minister for taking a dangerous gamble with the lives of the people at stake. As a result, diplomatic tensions between China and Japan are growing even further. Diara Minoil, Japan's chief cabinet secretary, called Consul General Xi Zhen's post highly inappropriate for a Chinese diplomat and demanded an explanation from China at a press conference. Lin Zhen, Chinese foreign ministry spokesperson, called Prime Minister Takayel Chilban's comments about collective self-defense misguided and dangerous, accusing them of trying to separate Taiwan from China and promote military activity. He said China strongly opposes and is dissatisfied with these remarks. However, Prime Minister Takayel Chilban also stated that he has no intention of retracting or canceling his remarks, so it appears that the conflict between China and Japan will continue for the foreseeable future. Aggressive Chinese diplomacy stems from wolf warrior tactics. Since President Xi Jinping came to power, Chinese diplomacy has completely shifted from its previous moderate approach to a more aggressive direction. Diplomats openly criticize and mock other countries abroad, and at home, they wrap it up as patriotism. Consul General Xi Jin's beheading comment should also be viewed in this context. On the surface, it may look like a personal emotional outburst, but in reality, it's sending a message within China that we will not back down and that we are not afraid of a country like Japan. Hardline remarks often spark patriotic fervor in Chinese online spaces, with people responding, "Well said." In the end, these kinds of remarks serve as threats toward the outside, while also aiming to strengthen internal unity through propaganda. The Xi Jinping administration faces internal problems like economic crisis, youth unemployment, and regional unrest. As these grievances grow, the government creates external enemies to divert attention. This is why diplomats use verbal aggression to demonstrate China's strength. In fact, this wolf warrior diplomacy worsens relations with the rest of the world, but from the Chinese government's perspective, it helps with internal control. That's because it can redirect the people's dissatisfaction away from the leadership and toward external forces. Chinese diplomacy prioritizes showing toughness to its people, even at the cost of international criticism. Consul General Xi Jin's remarks were likely a performance to embody wolf warrior diplomacy, claiming he would behead the Japanese prime minister. Such words and actions are viewed as signs of loyalty for diplomats in China, which is interesting. China-Japan diplomatic tensions are rising. President Trump is showing more support for China than Japan, making the situation take a strange turn. On November 10, when asked about a Chinese diplomat's harsh remarks toward Japanese Prime Minister Takatsu Sana, President Trump responded. President Trump said our allies have exploited us in trade more than China. He repeated his view that America's allies have had big trade surpluses while getting United States security support. The issue is the controversy over Japan being portrayed more negatively than China, America's main strategic rival. He even suggested beheading a close ally's head of government and spoke even more negatively about Japan. President Trump showed a more conciliatory approach to China after extending the trade truce at the October 30 United States-China summit. This time, some controversy is expected. The country in the most difficult position in this situation is Korea. The moment Japan announces its direct involvement in the Taiwan situation, the Korean peninsula will automatically become more deeply involved in the Taiwan invasion crisis. Until now, even though United States forces have been stationed on the Korean peninsula, their mission has focused on deterring North Korea. However, from now on, there is a greater possibility that they will also serve as a rear base for the United States military in the event of a Taiwan contingency. From China's perspective, both the United States forces in Japan and the United States forces in Korea are grouped together as the same target. That's because military support for Taiwan could use Korea's ports and air bases. If that happens, China will see Korea as enemy territory. So far, Korea has tried to balance between the United States and China. But now that Japan has officially declared its involvement, Korea is in a situation where it can no longer maintain this balance. If war erupts in the Taiwan Strait, the United States will likely seek support from allies, including Korea. China is surely aware of that, even if Korea tries to remain neutral on the Taiwan issue. The moment United States forces stationed in Korea move, China will no longer see Korea as a neutral country. If so, our country's diplomatic space will shrink quickly. The issue is, it's not Korea's choice, but a structural entanglement. If Taiwan, Japan, and the United States form a bloc, Korea will automatically be connected to that line. On the other hand, we can't side with China either. For Korea, we can't fight another country's war, but we also can't leave it. Japan's recent comments directly affect us. A Taiwan Strait crisis could quickly become a Korean Peninsula crisis. Sometimes I think we may need to get more involved than we thought. If we assume an invasion of Taiwan, our country likely wouldn't intervene directly or send troops, citing North Korea as a reason. With Japan now exercising collective self-defense, I believe our diplomatic strategy needs adjustments. Later, the United States may mention these statements to Japan and ask about Korea's response, creating a difficult situation for our country. Anyway, looking at the current situation, it seems that the diplomatic conflict between China and Japan will only get worse. I hope our country makes a wise choice in the midst of this. What do you think about the situation? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.